Hello there and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And today we're welcoming in a guy who's got a really important job ahead of him.
Well, Dr. Ken Jones, who's the Chancellor at Oklahoma Christian University, is our guest and our host as well for taping The Verdict, and we were very appreciative of that. And he's got a lot of interesting things to say about his life. We want to find out how he progressed as he has, what his callings have been, and how he responded to them, and then also find out a little bit more about Oklahoma Christian University.
An interesting series of life experiences.
Yes.
He's going to share them today on The Verdict. We'll be right back.
Right now, 6 feet can feel like a long ways away. But from 6 feet, we can still smile at each other. From our doorways and our stairways, from opposite sides of the street and opposite sides of the country. Through fear and frustrations, we can remind each other that we are still here for each other. Because we can still smile at each other. And we're not going anywhere.
Military service ran in my blood, starting from my father, which joined the Navy, then on the Chickasaw side, my uncle, which served in the United States Army. I'm Benjamin Espinosa, Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy, and I'm Chickasaw. I went to the Secretary of Defense's staff at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., which ultimately led to becoming a combat support technician for Naval Special Warfare, specifically SEAL Team 10. I think to be proud and to love your tribe, to love being Chickasaw, you also have to love being American. You also have to love everything that America stands for. Equality, perseverance, professionalism, and power. I want my family to know that their father is a good person, but also feels that he has an obligation to the country and to love this nation. Anything worth having is worth dying for. The military and the country owes me nothing. I owe it everything.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Well, today, as I indicated in the open, we're really glad to have Dr. Ken Jones, the Chancellor at Oklahoma Christian University, join us as our guest. He's our host, and so we want to say thank you, host, for letting us populate your campus for a few hours every week or every month. Dr. Jones is a native Oklahoman, and as he put it, he's an Oklahoma State graduate 3 times over. He did his undergraduate work at Oklahoma State University, got his master's degree at Oklahoma State University, ended up getting his PhD in engineering from Oklahoma State University. He grew up in western Oklahoma in the Cordell area. After graduating from Oklahoma State, he worked in the engineering sector for a number of years, and then he had a call to the ministry, which he heeded, and has been a minister for a number of years. Not only a minister, but an educator, an author, a guest speaker in many occasions, and we're really pleased he'd join us today. Dr. Jones, welcome. We're sure glad to have you here on The Verdict.
Glad to be here. Appreciate you letting me talk with you today.
Let's hear, first of all, growing up in western Oklahoma. What was that like?
Oh, I grew up as a farm boy in western Oklahoma. My dad was a farmer and a cattle guy, and so I grew up doing that and kind of fell in love with it and never could get it out of my roots.
Well, you still own property there. Are you still raising cattle?
Yeah, my son operates it. Our son operates it, and we moved out to Lubbock, Texas as in part of our journey, and I started buying land in western Oklahoma, and it's kind of south of Weatherford, Oklahoma, and our son decided he wanted to go out and try to run it, and he's a really good leader, hard worker, and so he's grown it, and we still run a lot of cattle.
How's it changed since you were growing up in that same environment?
Oh, it's gotten more complicated, a lot more complicated. You have to be bigger to survive. The equipment is larger, equipment's more expensive, input costs are more expensive. It's a true business. You really have to pay attention to make it work these days.
Did you feel like you were prepared for Oklahoma State and an engineering track?
I did. I mean, I originally went to Oklahoma State, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I loved math, and I loved agriculture, so I went into something called agricultural engineering. Most people don't know what that is. You know, our graduates go to work for John Deere or Caterpillar or Ditch Witch or a food company like Ralston Purina. Or I kind of went the civil engineering route, and in the master's degree, I went over into civil engineering, took a lot of courses over there, and then left for a while and worked, and came back and got into the mechanical engineering kind of world. And so.
You mentioned before we were started recording the show that you worked for the Army Corps of Engineers.
And my first job out of Oklahoma State with a master's degree was to go to Tulsa to be a part of the Army Corps of Engineers as a hydraulic engineer.
What projects did you work on there?
Well, the study that they were doing when I got there was a salt study. They were trying to figure out how to get the salt out of a certain river and lake down in North Texas, out in the northwestern part of Texas. And so I did some computer modeling and working on that primarily.
And they're still working on that.
Yeah, they are. North Pease River, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, your course changed considerably.
It did.
You, at some point in your life, I presume, felt a call to the ministry. About when was that, and what did you experience at the time?
You know, I'd gone back to Oklahoma State on the faculty there, but I was speaking a lot. I was speaking across Oklahoma in various subjects, and I was speaking in churches a lot, and people kept saying, hey, you know, you ought to consider being a preacher. I have a hard time saying no, and so I finally said, yes, I'll give that a try, and it went well. I don't think it was a natural fit for me. I ended up spending about a decade in engineering and then about a decade in preaching. And I ended up in Lubbock, Texas at a great big church that had about 1,500 people in every Sunday morning type thing. But Lubbock Christian University was looking for a president. And they found out I had an engineering background, and they found out I had a little civil engineering background, and they owned the nation's largest land application of waste facility by sprinkler irrigation. So from the city of Lubbock, they would put wastewater through 17-mile pipeline to 4,000 acres of land that we owned, and they were kind of in trouble with that, and they kind of looked at me and said, you know something about that? And I said, very, very little. And it's like they said, you got to be our president. So I was the least prepared president you could ever have. So,
well, how'd that go? I mean, you were there a good
you were
time.
there 18 years.
You were,
approximately.
19 years as
you were obviously appreciated.
You know, I loved it. It was not easy. The school was in financial trouble when I got there. But it was a team effort. I've been a student of leadership for years and years and years, and we put principles of leadership together, and it went well.
Yeah, you've done some writing in the leadership area, have you not?
I have.
You had a number of publications.
Got a couple books. I just did a lot of leadership work in the corporate world. I do a lot of leadership training, leadership speaking with banks and hospital systems, and executive coaching with telecommunication systems and companies, and in fact I did one last Friday for a huge company in Texas. So
I can't think of any place that is more in need on a full-time basis of a leader than a college or a university.
Yeah, it's really tough these days.
Yeah.
Really tough. Yeah.
What do you talk distinctly about when it comes to leadership? There's no shortage of books about leadership, and I assume you got over a keyboard or a typewriter and said, well, you know, we don't need one more unless I've got something unique to say. What is it?
Yeah, you know, after looking at leadership for 30 years or longer, I operate on principles. I had 60 or 70 leadership principles. And I kind of boiled those down and said, you know, there are 5 or 6 that really make a difference. And so I go to companies and I teach those 5 or 6 over and over again, you know. apply them in different ways.
And does it matter if a person's at mid-career or if they're just starting off as a university student? Are the principles the same?
I think they are. I really do. Now, I spent most of my career talking to people at the executive level, CEOs, executive coaching with CEOs and their executive team. That's what I did last week with a multi-billion-dollar company. But if I were talking to students, and I do talk to students about leadership, I use the same principles because the world is starved for good leadership. Organizations everywhere are starved for good leadership. City governments, state governments, national government, starved for good leadership. And so,
Would it be unfair to ask you to maybe briefly summarize your 5 or 6 points of leadership that you routinely cover?
well, that'd be kind of hard in a short period of time, but I will tell you, I start with this. I say the leader's job is to work for their good and speak for their welfare. I think if you're going to be a leader, if you're going to sign up for a leader, you got one great big job, and that's to work for the good of the people and to speak for their welfare above your own. And so in my family, I'm a husband and I'm a father. And I think my job is pretty singular. My job is to work for her good and to work for our daughter's good and to work for our son's good. And now to work for our 4 grandchildren's good, ahead of my own.
Right.
Yeah.
We got about a minute left in this segment. We were kind of going through your timeline and describe the decision to return to Oklahoma.
Well, I was a little bit tired of doing all the consulting and executive coaching, and our parents, my wife's parents and my parents were getting older, and we thought maybe it's time to retire and go back out to western Oklahoma. And since then, my father and mother both deceased. My wife's mother is still alive. But even after I got back to the ranch, which I always thought I wanted to do ranching, but it wasn't as fulfilling, so I started going back into the corporate world, doing some of that, and Oklahoma Christian called and said, hey, would you do a little of that here? And that's how I got here.
Dr. Ken Jones is the Chancellor at Oklahoma Christian University. We'll get more into what goes on here at Oklahoma Christian when we return.
At Whitten Burridge, we're litigators. That's all we do. All of our clients, some sort of wrong has occurred to them. We try to right that wrong. Corporate America, they have all the power. It's sort of like going against an army. I like helping the underdog. That's what gets me up out of bed every day.
Our success rate is phenomenal, but that's not all they get. We care about people.
I'm very proud of what we've been able to do for our clients, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to do in the future. There's still a lot of wrongs that need to be righted.
We want to reach out to every veteran we can in Oklahoma. There's somewhere around 340,000 veterans here in Oklahoma, and half of those are still unaware of the benefits or don't know how to go about getting them.
We help guide the veterans through the VA system. It's a giant maze, and we kind of help guide them through that maze. So our job is to try to help the veterans get everything that they're legally entitled to. There's just a special place in my heart for our Vietnam veterans and our World War II veterans, as well as any veteran, and that's why I do the job.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams rank number 2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
Welcome back to the set of the verdict. Mick Cornett with Camp Meyers, and our guest is Dr. Ken Jones.
Dr. Jones, I know at Lubbock Christian you were involved in Christian education. And here, of course, at Oklahoma Christian, you will be involved in the same thing, are involved in the same thing. Can you talk about the differences between Christian education as a label and a secular education, or I don't want to say non-Christian, but
Sure.
different education?
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of differences. It depends on which direction you want to go, but our schools, universities really started in America with a Christian education basis. And what we wanted to do at Christian institutions was to have really high quality academic training, which I believe we do, and we strive for that. But we try to focus also on who the person is and developing the person in character, developing the person in their attitude toward serving the world and making the world a better place. And we do that by talking about faith. We openly talk about our faith. Not one particular kind of faith necessarily, but Christian faith in general. And so it's a really interesting thing. We pray on our campus, and we regularly talk in our classes about your impact on the world as God would want you to have that impact on the world.
Well, at Lubbock Christian, I suppose their curriculum was just as you have described, and here at Oklahoma Christian, you're finding it substantially the same thing.
Yeah, Oklahoma Christian and Lubbock Christian are kind of sister schools. They were started in the same decade in the 1900s, and the mission was very similar. The expectations were very similar, and I've been well acquainted with Oklahoma Christian for a lot of years. When they started the engineering program, the man who kind of started that was on my PhD committee at Oklahoma State, and he tried to get me to come here and help him with the engineering program. I said, I'm not smart enough, So it's
You still believe that higher ed is an investment for a family in Oklahoma?
I very much believe that higher education is an investment. I believe this part of the strength of America is based on higher education. And I believe producing quality teachers is important. I believe producing medical scientists is really important. I believe we have an outstanding engineering program and computer science program here. It's really important to put quality engineers in the field that have the right character and the right leadership skills and can make a difference in this world.
As chancellor or as university president, you only have so many hours in a day.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know where to focus your attention, and where do you put your focus?
Well, as anybody that's been paying attention to higher education knows that both public and private is suffering in some ways, suffering financially. I'm really tired of talking about COVID, but COVID took its toll on almost everything we know, and it certainly took its toll on our universities. And so when I'm focusing right now, coming into a place like Oklahoma Christian, you have to look at the finances, you have to look at the morale, you have to look at the directions we're taking. And for example, admissions is project number one right now, getting admissions, telling our story. And we're doing admissions differently than we've ever done it before in the history of this school right now.
How's that?
Well, typically we just invited people to send their names in and we let them apply, and but we're out recruiting. We have recruiters in various locations in Texas, various locations in Colorado, several in Oklahoma, different locations. These recruiters are learning how to be salespeople, and they are being trained as salespeople. If they go through our system, they'll be top-notch salespeople, and they can get careers anywhere. But we're trying to take a professional look at recruiting, and we don't think we've ever done that before. Now, we don't know how it's going to turn out. We won't know until next fall, but we're really paying attention.
So this is a new program.
It's a new try. It's a new look.
Well, do you focus by going through the various churches throughout the state or the region, or is it through the high schools?
You know what we do public high schools, we do Christian high schools, we do churches of any kind that will let us in the door. We do one-on-one contacts. We are there to really focus, and every one of our admissions counselors knows where their targets are in their geographical area. And so it's really a focused, intentional effort. Mm-hmm. We borrowed a lot of that from Grand Canyon University. It's been very, very successful.
How much do you reach out to your alumni to help you in this effort?
We reach out to our alumni all the time. Alumni needs to stay engaged. The alumni of Oklahoma Christian is really a strong alumni base. They're really, really good. More and more, we are looking to our alumni to connect us with where they go to church, where they work, any group they might get together for us. So yes, you're using alumni a lot.
Is recruiting of new students a seasonal activity, or is it go on year round?
It's year round. Now it has its peaks, but our alumni group is meeting right now this morning. I mean, it's close to the holidays. The campus is about to close, but they're focused right now.
What sort of retention rate numbers do you look at, and what's on your dashboard as far as how are we doing in keeping our student body numbers up?
And that's a really insightful question, because it costs a lot less to keep a student than it does to get a student. And so retention is really important to us. Our retention goal is 80%, and we're doing really well at that right now. We put new retention efforts in place, strategies in place, working with students individually who are struggling in various disciplines, and reaching out to students, and doing a really good job right now.
I suppose a student will take a hard look at what is the particular university where they are now attending, and are thinking perhaps about leaving, and what are they doing for me? How are they treating me? Are they glad I'm here? That has a lot to do with it.
As you well know, the expectations of people in America have changed. The attitudes in America have changed. Some of those I like, some of those I don't like, honestly. But students really want to feel invested in. They don't want, we want to pour ourselves into our students. That's in the classroom, but that's also in our chapel experience. That's also in any other thing we do on campus. We want our students to know that they are valuable, that we exist to serve them in a variety of ways, and we want to help them be successful in life.
Well, I can tell you that the students and faculty that we interact with on doing this show here from this campus are just wonderful people to deal with, and couldn't have treated us any nicer. They've just been great.
We have faculty and staff who are absolutely outstanding. I mean, they're absolutely outstanding. And we want to pour into them too. I mean, the old leadership world says, and it's right, if you want to treat your customer right, you treat your employees right. And I'm not saying that we always in university settings look at the student as a customer. They're a partner with us, but we know that our faculty and staff have to be treated right, and they are really, really good right here, talented. So,
what are the challenges in Oklahoma? We see disappointing numbers in K through 12, and young people needing remedial education to be able to keep up at the college level. How much does that play into the success that you can expect?
Well, we're finding those difficulties right now because K through 12 struggled through COVID. It exasperated the problem, and teachers are, frankly, I don't think paid enough in the K through 12 world. I think that we're having teachers get burned out so very, very easily, and they're leaving. So the quality of education at K through 12 may not be increasing, it may be decreasing. We're seeing some of that right now. And so we're finding students have to come in, and we give remedial work to. And we have courses that are designed to catch them up. And we know we're going to have to do that. That's not going to change. And, everybody talks about the number of students that are going to come to universities. Well, the workplace out here is starving for workers right now. And they're paying young people a lot of money, and so some of them are saying, should I even go to college? It is still a great investment. It still makes a difference in your life. But I can understand where they're coming from too.
It's expensive, but like you said, it's an investment in the young person's future.
Hey, I've got our oldest granddaughter's just been accepted to Tahlequah, Northeastern Optometry School. And it's expensive. Out-of-state tuition's expensive. But I keep telling her, it's an investment. I mean, it's going to pay off the rest of your life.
Dr. Ken Jones is our guest. He is the Chancellor at Oklahoma Christian. Thank you so much for the time you spent with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to meet you, and
nice
good to be with you.
Kent and I'll have a final word when we get back.
This is the epidemic of my generation. This is my HIV. This is my Black Plague.
In the midst of one of our state's largest crises,
Oklahomans are dying from this preventable and treatable disease on a daily basis.
we believe there's hope.
That little pill will cause destruction through your whole life.
Watch the entire award-winning 9-part docuseries Killing Pain, made available by Fighting Addiction Through Education at killingpain.com.
It used to be okay in teachers' lounges. It used to be okay in maternity wards. It was okay in sporting arenas, college campuses, and office spaces. But now that we understand the deadly dangers of secondhand smoke, that's not okay anymore. So why is it okay that thousands of employees are exposed to it every day at work? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's protect hardworking Oklahomans. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I think for us, once we got started and we began to see the tremendous need just within our state, it really was just a calling for us. The blessings far outweigh any obstacles that we've faced.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
Back on The Verdict, wrapping up a show with Dr. Ken Jones, the Chancellor at Oklahoma Christian.
Yeah, Dr. Jones, very friendly and easy to talk to and easy to understand. I bet you he does a grand job here as Chancellor. Some
great roots in Oklahoma, grew up in western Oklahoma, got his undergraduate, his master's, and his PhD at OSU, went off in the academic world and came back and now lending his support here at Oklahoma Christian. That's going to do it. We'll see you next week for another show on The Verdict.